If you asked most tennis fans what Coco Gauff's greatest weapon is, they'd probably say her speed. Some would point to her incredible defense. Others would mention her powerful backhand. But according to former world number 1 Andy Roddick, they're all looking at the wrong thing. Because the most dangerous part of Coco Gauff's game isn't a shot. It isn't something you can measure with a radar gun. And it isn't even something most fans notice during a match. In fact, Roddick described it with a sentence that immediately caught the tennis world's attention. Those words sounded unusual. Why would one of the greatest American players of all time begin a compliment by making sure nobody misunderstood him? Because what he revealed wasn't about power. It was about something far more frustrating for every player who steps onto the court against Coco Gauff. Andy Roddick has praised great players before. He's analyzed Grand Slam champions. He's broken down elite techniques. And he's never been afraid to criticize when he believes it's deserved. That's exactly why fans paid attention when he started talking about Coco Gauff. This wasn't another conversation about improving her serve. It wasn't another debate about her forehand. Instead, Roddick focused on a quality that statistics rarely capture. A quality that doesn't always appear on highlight reels, yet somehow keeps helping Coco win the biggest matches. And according to him, it's becoming one of the biggest reasons her rivals struggle whenever they face her. For years, conversations about Coco Gauff have followed the same pattern. People praise her athleticism. They admire her movement. Then almost immediately, they point out the weaknesses, the serve, the forehand, the moments where she can look vulnerable under pressure. Those discussions aren't completely wrong. Every player has areas they continue to improve. But Roddick believes they've caused many fans to miss something much bigger. Because while everyone is busy searching for flaws, Coco continues doing something that very few players in the world can consistently achieve. She changes the way her opponents play. And that's where the real story begins. When people hear the word weapon in tennis, they usually imagine a 130-mile-per-hour serve, a devastating forehand winner, or a backhand that hugs the baseline. Coco Gauff's greatest strength doesn't fit into any of those categories. It's psychological, it's physical, and above all, it's incredibly difficult to escape. Opponents often walk onto the court with a clear game plan. Attack early, keep rallies short, pressure Coco's forehand, take control of the points. It sounds simple, until the match actually starts. Because somehow, that plan begins to disappear. Not because Coco overwhelms them with impossible winners, but because she quietly forces them into a completely different kind of tennis. Andy Roddick's explanation surprised people because it challenged one of tennis' biggest assumptions. He wasn't talking about technique. He wasn't talking about raw power. Instead, he pointed to something far more subtle. According to Roddick, Coco Gauff has an incredible ability to stop her opponents from playing their best tennis. At first, that might not sound like a compliment. In fact, that's exactly why he felt the need to clarify his point. He said, "I don't say that as an insult. That's a compliment. That's a skill." And with those few words, he completely changed the way many fans looked at Coco Gauff. Most elite players win because they overpower their opponents. They hit bigger serves, harder forehands, more spectacular winners. Coco often wins in a completely different way. She makes elite opponents look uncomfortable. Players who usually dictate rallies suddenly become hesitant. Aggressive shot makers begin forcing the ball. Simple winners turn into unforced errors. And before they even realize what's happening, the match has shifted in Coco's favor. That's not luck. That's pressure. The kind of pressure that doesn't always show up on the scoreboard, but slowly builds with every rally. Imagine walking onto the court with a clear strategy. Attack early. Finish points quickly. Don't let Coco settle into long rallies. It sounds like the perfect plan, until she returns one extra ball. Then another. And another. Suddenly, a rally that should have lasted 4 shots stretches to 10. Then 15. Now frustration begins to creep in. The opponent starts aiming closer to the lines, taking bigger risks, swinging harder, not because they want to, but because Coco leaves them feeling like that's the only way to finish the point. And that's where mistakes begin. Not because Coco hit an impossible winner, but because she quietly forced the error. Anyone can hit one incredible shot. Very few players can repeat the same mental pressure for 2 or 3 hours. That's where Coco separates herself. Her speed allows her to chase down balls that most players would never reach. Her anticipation helps her recover before the next shot is even struck. And her willingness to fight for every single point sends a powerful message across the net. You're going to have to earn everything today. For opponents, that's exhausting. Not just physically, mentally. Every rally feels longer. Every winner feels harder to hit. Every mistake feels more costly. Over time, even the world's best players begin questioning their own decisions. This is why Roddick called it a skill. Fans usually remember the spectacular winners, the aces, the diving volleys. But matches are often decided long before those moments happen. They're decided when one player quietly takes away the other player's confidence. And that's exactly what Coco has become so good at doing. She doesn't always beat opponents with power. She beats them by making them play a match they never wanted to play. Here's the strange part. Even after all of Coco Gauff's success, many conversations about her still begin with the same question. But what about her weaknesses? Her serve gets analyzed. Her forehand gets criticized. Every technical flaw is discussed in detail. And while those conversations continue, Coco keeps winning. That's exactly why Andy Roddick believes so many people are looking at the wrong picture. Because tennis isn't judged by perfect technique. It's judged by who wins the match. Some champions dominate with breathtaking winners. Others overwhelm opponents with pure power. Coco often wins in a way that looks ordinary. There aren't always highlight reel shots. There aren't always impossible angles. Instead, she builds pressure one rally at a time. She asks opponents to hit one more ball, then one more, then another. First, nothing seems unusual. But slowly, frustration starts taking over. The player across the net begins chasing winners that aren't there. The margins become smaller. The risks become bigger. And before long, the unforced errors start piling up. That's why matches against Coco can feel so draining. Not because she destroys opponents with power, but because she slowly takes away their patience. Every professional tennis player can hit incredible shots. That's why they're on tour. But the very best players possess something else. They make their opponents uncomfortable. Novak Djokovic has done it for years with his consistency. Iga Swiatek has done it by controlling rallies from the baseline. And now, Coco Gauff is developing her own version of that same quality. Not by copying anyone else, but by using her speed, athleticism, and relentless determination to force opponents out of their comfort zone. That's why Roddick didn't describe her greatest weapon as a stroke. He described it as a skill, because skills travel. They work on hard courts. They work on clay. They work on grass. Power can disappear on a bad day. But the ability to mentally and physically wear down an opponent, that stays with you. If you only looked at statistics, you might miss what makes Coco special. A stat sheet can tell you how many aces she hit, how many winners she produced, how many unforced errors she made. But it can't measure the pressure she creates. It can't show the moment an opponent stops trusting their own game. It can't explain why experienced players suddenly start making rushed decisions against her. That's something you have to watch closely. And once you see it, you begin to understand exactly what Andy Roddick was talking about. This isn't something that happened once or twice. It's becoming a pattern. More and more opponents are walking onto the court with solid game plans, only to leave wondering why they couldn't execute them. That's no coincidence. It's the result of a player who's learned how to control matches without always looking dominant. And perhaps that's the most dangerous kind of champion. The one who wins before people even realize what she's doing. If anyone still doubted Andy Roddick's analysis, they only needed to watch Coco Gauff's recent performances. Because time and again, the same pattern kept repeating itself. Her opponents didn't simply lose. They slowly drifted away from the tennis that brought them success in the first place. And that's exactly what Roddick was describing. Against top players, the opening games often look perfectly balanced. Both players hold serve. The rallies are competitive. Nothing feels out of the ordinary. Then, almost without warning, the rhythm begins to change. Coco starts reaching balls that look impossible to retrieve. She turns defense into offense. She refuses to give away easy points. The rallies become longer. The pressure becomes heavier. And suddenly, the player on the other side starts forcing shots that weren't part of the original game plan. Not because they want to, because they feel like they have no other choice. That's the invisible pressure Roddick was talking about. One of the hardest things in professional tennis isn't hitting great shots. It's continuing to believe in them after they've been returned again, and again, and again. Against Coco, many players eventually begin doubting themselves. A forehand that normally lands comfortably inside the baseline suddenly misses by inches. A risky winner becomes an unnecessary error. Simple decisions become complicated. That's how momentum changes. Not through one spectacular point, but through dozens of small moments that slowly shift the entire match. And once Coco senses that frustration, she rarely lets it go. People often talk about Coco's incredible athleticism. And they're right. She's one of the fastest movers on the WTA Tour. But speed alone doesn't explain why opponents struggle so much. The real difference is how intelligently she uses that movement. She doesn't chase every ball just to survive the rally. She uses her court coverage to keep asking difficult questions. Can you hit another perfect shot? Can you stay patient for 5 more exchanges? Can you keep believing in your strategy when nothing comes easily? Those questions don't appear on the scoreboard, but every opponent feels them. And by the final set, the mental battle can become just as exhausting as the physical one. Every champion eventually develops an identity. Some become known for unstoppable serves, others for fearless aggression. Coco Gauff's identity may be something much rarer. A player who quietly takes away an opponent's confidence, without needing to overpower them. If that's truly becoming her greatest weapon, then Andy Roddick may have identified something the rest of the tennis world is only now beginning to appreciate. Because once a player learns how to consistently make elite opponents abandon their own game, they become incredibly difficult to stop. When Andy Roddick made that comment, many fans expected him to reveal a devastating forehand, a bigger serve, or some hidden technical improvement. Instead, he revealed something much more important. A quality that doesn't always appear in statistics. A quality that doesn't always make highlight reels. But one that wins matches against the very best players in the world. Because Coco Gauff's greatest weapon isn't simply how she hits the ball. It's how she changes the match itself. She changes the rhythm. She changes the pace. And perhaps most importantly, she changes the way her opponents think. Every extra rally forces another decision. Every difficult return creates another moment of doubt. Every impossible ball she chases down reminds her opponent that nothing will come easily. That's why players who usually look calm can suddenly become impatient. Players known for precision start missing routine shots, and players who normally control matches find themselves reacting instead of dictating. That's not coincidence. That's pressure. The kind of pressure Coco has become one of the best in the world at creating. What's remarkable is that she's still evolving. Like every young champion, there are still areas of her game that can improve. Her serve can become more consistent. Her forehand can become even more reliable under pressure. Those conversations will continue, and they should, because that's how elite athletes grow. But focusing only on those weaknesses risks missing the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that Coco continues to win against world-class opposition because she already possesses a skill that many players spend an entire career trying to develop. The ability to make great opponents uncomfortable. That's why Andy Roddick chose his words so carefully. He knew some people might misunderstand what he meant. So before making his point, he made one thing absolutely clear. I don't say that as an insult, because forcing another professional to abandon their natural game isn't criticism. It's one of the highest compliments a player can receive. It means you've become more than just talented. You've become a problem. The kind of opponent nobody enjoys facing. The kind who slowly drains confidence, patience, and belief one rally at a time. As Coco Gauff continues chasing more Grand Slam titles, one question will keep following her rivals onto the court. Can they stay patient long enough to beat her, or will they eventually fall into the same trap that Andy Roddick described? If recent performances are any indication, the answer is becoming clearer with every tournament. Because Coco Gauff's most dangerous weapon was never her biggest shot. It was always her ability to make everyone else's game fall apart.